Status connected. Facebook Live connected. Rumble connected. Twitter X connected. LinkedIn connected. This is the booth. We are cleared to go live. Send the signal to the studio and go live.
List with Elizabeth show, ready to go live in 3, 2.
When you think selling and buying a home,
when I think real estate, I think List with Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Klein.
Elizabeth and Klein. And here is the host of the List with Elizabeth show, Elizabeth Klein.
Hello, hello. I am Elizabeth and Klein, host of the List with Elizabeth show. As you probably already know, I love that music. Gets me going every time. I can't help but dance in my chair. But let's definitely get down to business. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're going to have another great episode today, teaching you all a little bit more about residential real estate. I am a residential real estate specialist in the Northern Virginia area, helping people buy and sell residential homes. There's so much to know about this process. I'm constantly learning with every transaction and here to give a little knowledge and information back to you all. So before we get started, just a quick reminder, if you're in the area and you need help, please feel free to reach out to me, 703-829-LIST. If you are moving out of the area and you would like to be connected with a professional in the area in which you are moving, please reach out to me as well. I'm going to go ahead and make sure we get you connected to a good, solid agent in the area of your choice. If you have friends moving into the area and they need help, again, please feel free to reach out. Always happy to help and excited to do so. So I wanted to just touch base a little bit on this week. And before we do that, please subscribe, like, and comment on the show. It helps me understand what viewers want to see, what questions you all have. I'm happy to get back to you. And again, feel free to call with any questions. So this week in real estate, I just wanted to give you a little behind the scenes look. I had a beautiful listing go on the market. It went on the market on a Thursday. We had a very nice rush of showings on the market, on the home. We did 2 back-to-back open houses and did end up with 4 offers on the property come Monday morning. So, you know, the market inventory is still low. There is a lot of demand for the amount of homes that are going on the marketplace. This particular home is going to close well over list price with, more importantly, no contingencies. And what I mean by that is, for the sellers, there's no risk that the buyers have a walkaway clause. They're not going to walk away on a home inspection. They're not going to walk away on a low appraisal, because all of those things were removed from the contract. The reason we're seeing a lot of that right now is because, again, inventory is very low for the amount of buyer demand that is out there. So one of the things we see very, very commonly removed from contracts these days is a home inspection contingency. And again, a contingency just means a reason that you may or may not move forward with the contract if you have that intact. So if that's removed, there is no home inspection contingency in which the buyers can walk away. So to sort of help you all out there who might be looking to buy and who are feeling a little nervous about that, because that's one of the most common things people, you know, say to me when they hear the news that, hey, if I want to buy a house in this market, a lot of other buyers are waiving the contingencies. I probably will have to do that too. That makes me very nervous. So there are things you can do to prepare. You can get educated. You can do a pre-inspection on some houses that would allow you to have that information before you make the offer. And there's also something called a walk and talk, where you could find a reputable inspector to walk the home with you again prior to making an offer and look through some of the major items. So today I am going to bring on one of my most favorite home inspectors, actually probably my favorite. I'm just going to say my favorite, especially since he's on the show today, right? His name is Fred Reid. He is going to go over with us the 4 things buyers should always look out for when purchasing a home. And Fred, I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself. You have a beautiful, extensive, impressive background. I actually love hearing about your background every time you say it. So if you all would help me welcome Fred to the show, we will have him here today on the phone. And take it away, Fred. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
Hey, that was a nice introduction there. I guess I'm your favorite today, is what you're saying.
My favorite always, always.
I'll take that.
Okay.
So I guess we met years ago. I was a home inspector for 28 years. I did 9,000 inspections. I stepped out of the industry during COVID, but I'm still a contractor. I'm still a court expert on residential drainage and mold and remediation, as well as new construction. I have a contractor's license, and I do a little building and repairs on the side to keep myself busy. But I love doing these inspections with you, where we just walk through the house and talk about the larger items. I know that's not an option for everybody, so wanted to give a couple of things that people might be able to find out for themselves on homes.
I love it. Thank you so much. I am so impressed all the time that you're a court expert on mold and drainage. And to your point as well, you're also an expert in new home construction, because there is a difference in inspecting a home built in the 1970s versus something built today, correct?
Oh, yeah. There's such a range of construction in the Washington area. I started out years ago in Arlington, was my home area, and I got to see just some great, well-built houses. And the modern homes are so much more efficient and very crafty. And so there's a great wide range to be aware of out here. Lots of love in homes out here.
Great. Love to hear that. So let's get started with the first thing that you're going to recommend buyers look out for. And we're going to talk first and foremost about the roof. So I will let you kind of take it away from here. Tell us what you look for and what buyers can look for.
Gotcha. So as a prospective home buyer, you walk up to a house, and knowing these sort of limitations you might have on contingencies and whether or not you can get a home inspection, you can eliminate or add to your list some of these homes that as you walk up to them, as you walk around briefly. And of course, we're most concerned with the ones that are the biggest money. Every home is going to have little problems, and little maintenance to be done, whether it's touching up paint or caulk. Every house is going to have that. But if we can eliminate the big problems, you can save a lot of money. And the biggest one of all would be the roof. Now, without being a roofer, you don't have to have all knowledge of a roofer to be able to kind of figure out the age. One of the best ways you can do this is making a comparison. To just stand back and stare at the roof for a second, and then compare it to the neighboring houses. And you'll start to see similarities or differences. You'll start to see if everybody in the community has gotten what looks like a new roof. Some of these roofs are what we call architectural shingles, or an old name for them would be 3D tile. And they're a little bit more raised surface, not quite as flat as the old roofs. And these newer architectural roofs, the ones with more detail on them, last longer. They'll last 35 years. And that can give you, just a little bit extra security on the house. Now, if you see moss or discoloration on the roof, these aren't necessarily things that hurt the roof, but they can be marks of age. If you live in the woods, of course, eventually you get some sort of lichens or fungus on the roof, and that happens. It's not going to hurt the roof, but it can give you an indication that it's an older roof. Also, where you look at where the roof gets to the edge, it will hang over just a little bit, a couple inches. If it's hanging over 4 or 5 inches, maybe it was an amateur. You can determine it was an amateur roof. If it's cut right back, right to the edge, kind of flush with the edge, sometimes we need to worry about water getting into the trim. And another great place to look is right up where it meets the chimney if you've got one. Remember the old chimneys, the way the flashing, the metal part at the bottom of the chimney used to go like a set of stairs?
Oh, yes.
Down there? Those are the older houses. They're always built much better. They do things a little bit differently with the flashing now. It's a little bit quicker and a little bit easier to maintain. But that old step flashing is a great way to terminate that area. You terminate that connection. And when you look at where those two parts meet, it gives you a good indication of how old that roof is. You can tell by the shininess of the flashing, or whether it's straight or whether it looks like steps. And that'll give you a sense of the age there. But definitely want to pay attention to the roof. Most modern roofs are going for $15,000 to $25,000. There's lots of exceptions there that can be a little bit less or a lot more. But most modern homes are in that range, and it'd be great to exclude that cost as you walk up to the house.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing that you can ascertain so much just visually, just from looking at the roof. I love your tip of looking at the roof on the home you're interested in, and then just turning around and looking at the neighbors' roofs. Do they all look the same? Does your roof look a lot newer? Does it look older? A lot of times buyers will say, we'll just look at a roof, and if it's dark or discolored, or like you said, it has some moss on it, sometimes instantly they think, oh, the roof is old, but that may not be the case, especially here in the Northern Virginia area. We have so many homes that are under lots of trees and wooded areas, and you're just going to have that happening as a natural cause. It's just something you're going to have to clean and keep an eye on. What's the best way to remove that? Is there a recommended way to keep your roof clean?
Well, you don't have to remove those things. I know there's detractors out there to what I'm going to say, but I'm going to tell you as a home inspector who's looked at more than 9,000 roofs, even though it's done 9,000 inspections a day, we see roofs all the time everywhere. And this sort of growth of fungus on there is called lichens, 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 like you would see on a stone or a boulder. And it takes an awful long time for it to do any serious damage. So you don't have to take it off.
Okay.
Now, if you want to take it off, a solution that has a light amount of chlorine and a bit of water, simply sprayed on the roof, connected to your garden hose, will kill it off, and then the normal wind and rain will eliminate over a season or two. It'll just disappear. If you need to have some more immediate removal, now you're talking about getting on the roof and brushing it off, which can be done. You'll want to use something that is a softer bristle brush. We don't want to take off the nice surfacing of the shingles. Mm-hmm. And it can be a little bit tough up there, tough to stay safe. So you might consider hiring someone to do that. There are services out there that can clean those off and resurface them, make it look nice for you. And that's an option if the aesthetics are important to you. But we don't have to worry too much about the function.
Okay. Hey, that's good to know. Also, I wanted to ask, sometimes, like you were saying about the new architectural shingles, I've heard that there might be 50-year shingles. Is that something that's common or that you've heard of with the newer shingles, 50 years?
There absolutely are. It has to do with the thickness and the composition of the shingle, and there are legitimate products out there that will last 50 years. There's also a company or two out there that installs roofs that gives a lifetime warranty with those sort of things, and you can imagine those things do come with a little bit of a premium, but if you can afford it, it's a great roof to have. It's worth having.
That's amazing. 50 years. That's a long time. Okay, I love that. I think we have another slide here on the roof in regards to the shingles, if we want to put that up. Now, clearly, I am no home inspector. I have not inspected 9,000 homes. I don't come out of the gate and fill this gap for my clients. I am a realtor. But when you see something, obviously, like this picture, myself and anyone included can kind of go, wow, something's wrong, right? This is an old shingled roof. Something's going on here. What are some things, Fred, that maybe, if I'm trying to think what I've encountered with you out on the field as well. What are some things that visually may look wrong, but functionally may not be wrong outside of the lichens? Or is there anything else that you can think of?
Well, starting with the picture that you have there, real
Okay.
quick, the brittle edges or pit marks from previous hailstorms or people walking on the roof or branches that have fallen, all these things are things that will increase the aging process of the roof. Once you start to get that brittleness that shows that it's been around for a while, it does let more light through. Sunlight is your biggest, aging factor there on the roof.
Wow. Okay, let me pause there for a moment. Sunlight is the biggest aging factor on a roof, and sun is the biggest aging factor on your skin. Let's just be clear.
Yes.
Right? As we all age, wear your sunscreen and keep your roof protected.
So you have these different parts of the composition of the roof, and there are a variety of different products out there. But one of the main ones that we're familiar with is what we call asphalt shingle or asphalt composition tiles. And they have the hard or black component to this is asphalt. Well, asphalt breaks down so much in the sun, just like you see on the road. You get potholes. It breaks down in the sun.
Okay.
And the way we stop that process on a roof is by adding a granular surface. It's usually gravel or some other synthetic that's been added to the surface that will break up the sunlight. And that's what preserves the longevity of the roof. So as that gravel comes off over repeated rainstorms and wind and the branches hitting it and hailstorms, the normal things of life around Washington, D.C.,
Right.
as those things, break up the roof surface and the asphalt becomes more exposed, then that aging process starts to accelerate. Checking sometimes you can look at the bottom of the downspout, right there, the little splash block, and see how much gravel has accumulated. Now, you talk about what's something that looks like it could be a problem, but it's not. A brand new roof will put off an awful lot of gravel, so you'll see some of that in the splash block on a brand new house. So if it looks new and you find the gravel, it's not a problem.
Okay.
Now, you get to a later, a roof that you think is older and you're finding gravel. Now that, is another item to kind of back up what you thought about the age of the roof.
Okay.
And if that can be confusing, you can always get me on the phone.
Okay. I love that. And also, I just want to point out in Virginia is a buyer beware state, meaning there's no seller disclosures on anything. So if a seller just doesn't know how old the roof is, they're not required to go and find out and do research. I mean, it's very common that sellers say, "Hey, well, I bought the house 5 years ago. The roof was there. We've had no problems with it. The prior sellers didn't know the age of the roof or didn't share the age of the roof, and we just don't know." So you can't always find out. So that's why we're trying to give some ideas as to how we can find out more information. And one tip that I did learn in regards to what Fred was saying about as trees fall on the roof and, thunderstorms and whatnot, hail, one of the things you can do as a homeowner is keep trees trimmed away from the roof. Make sure there's nothing constantly hitting against the roof. Right, Fred?
Absolutely. And then the biggest one is a branch that's touching the roof will brush back and forth with the wind, and that can do a fair amount of damage, even a small branch. It's less of an occurrence that a large branch would fall on the house. We don't have to worry too much. That's what homeowners insurance is for. It's the little branches that can do the most damage.
Awesome. I love that. Okay. Anything else on the roof, or shall we move on to point number 2?
If I can just follow up with one thing, if you get a chance to get into the attic safely, if you're doing one of these, open houses and they have the pull down stairs available and you're allowed to walk up that, you can look into the attic. It's not a common place we find mold, but it can be there. It's worth looking. But sometimes you can determine, you can tell that the plywood in there has been replaced. You know what the plywood looks like on the shelf at Lowe's or Home Depot. Mm-hmm. You've seen that color. So if you see that particularly light color in the attic, it's a good sign that the roof has been completely replaced. A dark shaded plywood, covering underneath the roof is not a huge problem. But the lighter ones can be an indication of a younger roof. And if you look up there and you find what looks like individual boards, that is a super nice construction. That's an old way that we used to build homes around Washington, and it's super strong. It's a great house to get a hold of if you can.
Great. Yes. So many times Fred has helped me look into the attic, and, he'll say, okay, look over here and see the coloration and look over here. So it is amazing what you can learn and what you can find out just from visually inspecting. So those are all amazing tips. Okay, shall we move on to point number 2?
Yes.
All right, this is a big one. Okay, foundation. A lot of times buyers will say to me, especially when we're starting our search, hey, we're really nervous about not having a home inspection because, well, what if the foundation is bad? And again, so let's go through some things that get a little education behind us here to understand what we can see and what we can learn about the foundation from Fred today. So Fred, take it away.
All right, so most every foundation you're going to run into in the Washington area is going to be a concrete foundation, whether that be poured solid concrete or concrete block. The modern ones, we call them concrete masonry units. The old ones we call cinder blocks. But most all the homes being built in modern times here are poured concrete. That's a solid wall. They have a pattern that looks like brick, but it's in fact solid all the way through. Now, if you're anywhere, in the sound of this broadcast here around DC, there's a chance that the house got some water in the basement. We get the occasional big storm comes ashore out here, and some of the winters can be tougher, although lately they've been very pleasant.
Yes.
And all these things will take a toll on the foundation, as well as the normal weight and what we call settling of the house. So every foundation will have some cracks. Out of 9,000 homes that I inspected, and all the other ones I've heard of, I really have never come in contact with a foundation that didn't have some sort of cracking. They're always there. There's a variety of them. Now, that sort of scenarios that can go through and the different types of foundation and the combinations thereof would be too extensive to cover today. So we'll just keep it short and say most of the cracks that you're going to run into don't mean too much. If you can't stick a quarter into the crack, it probably doesn't need too much attention.
Okay, so let me just pause there for a minute. So if I take a quarter out of my wallet and I can stick it in the crack, then it's something that we need to address further and look into more.
We'll say that it needs attention, but it's still not necessarily a problem.
Okay.
Once you've determined that it's big enough that you could put a quarter in it, now you look to see, is it vectored? And vector would indicate some sort of direction and force. And so if the crack is thin on one end and wider on the other end of the crack, that usually will point to some sort of load problem. If it's pointing up, that's some sort of heaviness or concentration of weight that's pushing down on it. If it's thinner at the bottom, that means like something's pushing up from the bottom. Either the house is settling around a large stone, or maybe there's a root or something that's coming in contact there. Little cracks happen all the time.
Okay.
And a lot of cracks are vectored. But if it's not too wide, and again, if you look at a 30-year-old house and you find a vectored crack in there, and you can just barely get that quarter in it, it's probably not a big deal.
And Fred, what do you mean again by vectored?
Vectored means it's thin on one end
and
wider on the other end of the crack, almost like it's an arrow, like it's pointing.
Okay, I got it. Okay.
And that point, that vector usually points to the load. Now, I don't mean to get too technical. The point is, a lot of people will dismiss a house or make a big deal about cracks, and you could lose out on a really nice house that has very normal cracks. All these sort of cracks can be sealed. The ones we're worried about, right, will usually be the larger, wider cracks, the ones that are horizontal rather than vertical, and the ones that look like stair steps. Now, the neat one about stair step cracks is that often happens from poor drainage, like the gutters are draining right down next to the foundation instead of being led away with a downspout extension or a splash block or some other method of good grading. In the absence of those, if the water goes down to the foundation, sometimes it washes away the soil and the house begins to settle kind of adversely into that space that's been created. And that'll create these sort of stair-step cracks. And they almost always occur with a matching crack on the opposite corner, or like the opposite plane, like 90 degrees away. Look around the front and you'll see one around the side. Now those will indicate, again, the moisture or water problems coming off the gutters. Other ways to see that would be the bushes are right next to the house and they're way overgrown. Heavy overgrown vegetation usually is a sign of a lot of water next to that. And of course, we get into wet basements. There's your other indicator. But what I really want to make sure you know is don't lose a house over very small, normal cracks. And if you think it's a bigger crack, you probably need to follow up with someone, whether it be a contractor or a home inspector like that's in the marketplace, or someone like me that knows about both.
Yeah. And I also want to say, as a home buyer in this market, there are going to be certain homes that you're not going to be comfortable waiving a home inspection. If you see a big crack, like Fred's talking about, a vectored crack, something you could put a quarter in, I would never advise you, to waive your contingency and just go for it. I mean, you have to be smart as well. So, there's like a way and balance between, being successful in buying your home and not letting your emotions take over and forgetting all logic. So we have to make sure we walk that fine line. Fred, you said something important about the downspouts. So a lot of times when we go to look at property, the downspouts are, coming down the home, and then we see this, and I'm going to call it ugly. I just think it's ugly. It's a plastic, right, extension that comes out. It looks like an accordion, and it comes out and it takes the water away from the house and a couple feet away. Those are so important. I mean, to me, they're not very pretty to look at, but that doesn't always matter. When you're protecting the home, those are things you want to see. And sometimes homeowners have them buried, right? They'll come down and they'll be underground, so you won't really necessarily see them, but it's better to see them than not to see them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So those accordion-looking pipes that you have there, they look terrible, but boy, do they do a great job. That's what we call, it's 4-inch ADS, that's ADS pipe is what we're looking for. And you can buy it in 10-foot sections for about $3 or $4 at Lowe's. And you want to get the non-perforated one. You need a nice solid pipe to carry that water away. And we want water away from the house in a distance that's equal to the distance down to the bottom of the basement, what we call the footer. And so if you got a big, tall, in-ground basement, that's 6 feet in the ground, we need to get that water at least 6 feet away or better. Now, you can bury them for sure. They just need to go just below the surface of the ground so you don't see them. Just make sure that they terminate or they come out somewhere where, to the light so that it can dump the water out. But absolutely, imperative to get the water away from the house so it doesn't soak around the foundation. Other issues will be keeping the gutters clean, or making sure you have a good grade, that is, that the land slopes away from the house gently. We like to get it to go away from the house at least 4 inches every 10 feet or so, and more can be better. But keeping that water away from the foundation really is the core of so many other items or problems that you can get in a house. And just keeping those gutters clean, extended, will save you a lot of trouble in the long run.
Yeah. And sometimes also when I go to look at property with buyers, I can just see the gutters they're filled with stuff. You can see from the ground looking up at them, you can see little twigs sticking out and dirt and debris. And I mean, especially when you put your house on the market, even if you haven't been cleaning them regularly, at least get them cleaned before you present the house to the marketplace. But that is a dead giveaway that there's deferred maintenance in the house, potentially, problems the sellers let go. So having those gutters cleaned out and making sure they're maintained. I also like what you said earlier, Fred, about if you see a lot of overgrown shrubbery pushed up against the house, that could be, a sign of water going into the basement. Sometimes when I meet with sellers, they're very proud of their curb appeal and their robust bushes. But to me, I'm looking at them going, these need to be trimmed. These are too big. There's too much going on. And it really isn't just an opinion of, should it be trimmed or should it be full? It's really a potential structural problem to the house. So home maintenance is probably a whole other show that we could talk about in regards to all of this.
Oh, yeah, we could go on for hours.
Yeah, hours and hours. Okay. All right, great. Anything else?
Just follow up on that?
Yes, please.
So where we have the picture of the foundation cracks that you showed, those cracks aren't normally something that would be caused by sort of planting of landscaping or bushes in the front. It's more likely to be from settling of the house, and in some cases you might have a tree that's been planted too close that the roots can get in. Usually anything that's going to be 20 feet away from the house, big trees, are going to do just fine. There are a couple of different types of trees that can grow some big roots over time, but that's not usually your cause for those cracks. But having too much water next to the foundation will cause those bushes to grow more. And like you said, I like those other leading indicators. That someone's attention to landscaping is a pretty good indicator of whether or not they could afford to live where they are. If they kept up with those things, certainly they kept up with the bigger things.
Yep. Little clues, right? People leave clues.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, great. If we're good on that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to point number 3. Things buyers should look out for: pests, mold, and just general hazards.
Okay, so the big ones there is mold, termite, and then a wider group we'll call hazardous materials. Back to the water. If you've got a wet basement, mold can grow. Mold spores are everywhere. This time of year, the mold count outside is 20 to 30,000 spores per cubic meter. And that mold will grow whenever it gets the right opportunity. It just needs the right temperature and enough moisture, and it'll take off. It's everywhere. It's on your clothes. It's on your shoes. It's on your dog. It's on your kids. It just doesn't grow until you give it that right environment. So sometimes, the wet leather shoes that you put in the closet, you close the door and forget about those shoes for a while, that can develop into a problem over time. But I'm not so concerned about the little problems there. We look for the big ones there, and that would be an indication that the basement has flooded or been wet in the past. You see the picture on the left there with a little bit of a pattern of black mold there. Not all black mold is the one that they talked about in the Washington Post article years ago, but most of it has some detrimental effect, whether it be a simple allergen, or whether it's a toxin, or whether it's something more serious like a pathogen. If you're looking for a bargain out there, a house with mold can be a great purchase because you can always fix the mold. You can always remove it. You can always correct the drainage. You can always solve it. You don't have to give up your dream house because you found a little bit of mold. But if you're on a tighter budget, you can use that as an indicator that this house might have problems. When you look in the basement, you'll get a sense of whether or not they're comfortable with the basement. Do they have expensive furniture down there? Do they have nice carpet? Is the trim nice and bright white? How well has it been kept? Does it feel dry? Ladies out there, you have a stronger nose than your husband, so you'll want to keep an eye on those things, or keep a nose on those things. You'll smell it if there's a problem. Also, if their storage is raised, like you see they have pallets or they have shelves and everything is up off the floor, that's another good indicator. Also, you can look on some appliances like washers or dryers or furnaces, maybe water heaters, and look and see if there's a water line or rust on the bottom. Any of these indicators of water should be ready to be addressed. Whether you have a budget for it or a plan or negotiation, you should be ready to address that because you're not going to want to live with that very long term.
I found it interesting. The one day you were looking at a house with me, and there were little white. It just looked like a little white film. We were in the basement. We were looking up at the ceiling on the exposed floorboards, and there was just like little white film. And you spotted that right away. And that was mold, and that it was a lot, right? It was kind of everywhere, but it wasn't a big problematic type of mold. So mold isn't always dark and black, right? So.
Right. The white stuff, sometimes it'll show with a little bit of a green cast. That's penicillium. And that's the first one to grow. It usually come up 24 hours after you have some sort of excessive moisture. And it's going to show up on the areas that are the quickest to get cold. And that would be either like a hollow core door, which is your typical 6-panel door inside of a house, or a leather jacket, or leather shoes. If you have a library with nice leather-bound books on it, these would be the first place to look for these things. Now, if the problem is more developed, you'll see it actually proceed up a wall, where you might find it underneath of a piece of furniture, but not on the top of a piece of furniture. It kind of depends on where the dew point is, but that light white cast shows up real quick with any old flashlight. You can shine that across a door pretty fast, like looking under the stairs, or you can shine it, look in the closet real quick, see if they've got any jackets hung up in there, and I'll give you a real good sense. Usually, again, you'll be able to smell that sort of thing because penicillium has one of the strongest smells. But the thing about penicillium is you could always clean it off. It's a simple allergen. It's everywhere. You'll never get rid of it, in the world here, but you can eliminate it from your house. And another idea there is if you're really worried about it and you just didn't find any big problem, there are commercial HEPA filters that are available at Lowe's and Home Depot for about $200 to $300 that you put in your house and just plug it in and go 6 months between filter changes. And they work great at eliminating all those little things, those little mold spores that can turn into a bigger problem later.
And if we do see that in a house, what's the best way to clean that off?
So the chemical, this is great. The chemical is dimethyl methyl benzyl ethylene ammonium chloride. Everybody say that with me.
I know it, right? I've heard you say it a million times. Say it again.
Dimethyl methyl benzyl ethylene ammonium chloride. It's an amazing chemical. It's everywhere. It is in Mr. Clean wipes. It's in some products of Windex. It's in 409. It's the main chemical there. It's so common. It's the most common chemical you find in regular baby wipes. It's also the COVID cleaner. It's what they were using to disinfect everything when COVID was out. Methyl benzyl ethylene ammonium chloride. And it's just a simple wipe. It smells great. It smells like Chuck E. Cheese. And it has no big product warnings on the label in its diluted state. It's just a great chemical to use. And so a little 409 or a couple baby wipes to clean your windows in the spring, or maybe clean the inside of the closet, or even wipe down the jacket is a great way to keep all those sort of problems at bay.
Yes, that's amazing. I remember one day I called you. I said, I just opened my window for the first time in X number of months. And I think there's little mold or something. And you said, go grab some baby wipes, and just clean it out. And that's what we did. So awesome tips, good tips for home sellers and good things to look out for home buyers. So I think the main point I do want to drive home is I feel like the media has really put a huge, big, bad stigma to the word mold. And it's not always a big, bad problem, right? It's everywhere. Like Fred said, it's on your clothes, it's on your shoes, it's on your kids, it's everywhere. It can grow. If it grows too much and it's the wrong type of mold, it can be remedied. So don't let that scare you per se, but be educated, know what you're getting. Understand if there is something going on, what it would take to remedy it. And again, someone like Fred would be great at assessing that pre-offer if you are a buyer. What do you have
don't be too afraid about it. Just address it and move on.
Address it and move on. What about termites, pests, that kind of thing? What do you look out for? What are little clues buyers can look for as they're going through a house?
Gotcha. So if you're walking through a house and you find some ants in there, you wouldn't immediately expect that the house was built poorly or that it has a pest problem. The modern homes are built so well. The builders are doing such a great job at keeping these things tight, but making them efficient and coming up with all kinds of different ways to keep bugs out. That said, ants will find a way in. Some years will have more rain than others. This year we've had so much rain, you can get ants in almost any house. You just have to get it treated. You can do it by yourself or hire a company. But ants can be an indicator that there's also an environment for termites. Now, you need to know most homes built after 2000 have a number of measures that they've taken in the construction process that make it really difficult for termites to get in. Okay. We're not going to say impossible, but we're going to say that it's downright improbable for most modern homes to get termites. Still, some of them do because of modifications or simple errors, and you need to be diligent. You should be checking every few years for termites in a modern home. Now, on the ones that are older than 2000, a regular yearly inspection for termites is a great idea. There's a number of companies out there that would love to do that for you, and it's not hard to do a good job. You'll see the picture on the right with the little mud tube. Termites have to have these little mud tubes to regulate moisture. And they really need to be within less than 6 inches of travel time between the ground and what they're attacking when they're on the outside of the house. Any more than that, that little mud tube, that little highway for them gets too dry for them to function. Now, in a crawl space or in a dark basement, they can travel further. Again, modern homes have these protections that keep that from happening, so it's less likely than something making run on the house from the outside. So keep your faucets from dripping, keep your bushes pulled back or trimmed down. And we don't want to push the mulch right up to the house. We like to have that good 6-inch gap between the first layer of siding and the bottom of the ground. Even where it's real close, like around the garage, we want to just keep a good distance there to make it difficult for them to come in. Termites love mulch. They love good hardwood mulch. They would much rather eat that than make a run on your house and eat all that dry treated wood. So they can be quite comfortable out there, and they serve a purpose in nature, and they do their thing, and it all helps the general ecology. We don't want to get rid of all the termites. We just don't want them coming in the house.
I will say in my 10 years of doing this, there have maybe been three or four houses, literally over 10 years that have been tested and have had a termite or wood destroying insect problem. And in Virginia, this is actually a gift to the buyers. There can be a termite and wood destroying insect inspection as part of your contract on the house, but it is not a contingency on you moving forward to purchase the house. Basically what it is your ability as a buyer to have the home tested. If anything is found wrong, the seller does have to remedy that. And it's not a contingency, it's not a negotiation, it's just a Virginia law that the seller go ahead and will remedy that as part of the contract. So not so worried about finding termites up front prior offer, because you can get that on the back end as part of the contract, not a contingency per se, which is nice. So again, I do see these tests going out almost, I would say 90% of the houses that go under contract do get a termite and wood destroying insect inspection. And maybe 5 over the past 10 years have had a little bit of treatment needed, but I really haven't seen anything over $1,000 for treatment costs. Usually it's under $500. So this is not, like Fred saying, it's not really a big thing that we're seeing in the DC area.
And one more thing, which I typical, the only termites we have in this area are what we call eastern subterranean termites. And a healthy colony, unrestricted colony, can only eat about 1.5 feet of wood per year. So even if you miss something during the buying process or even the inspection, it's not the end of the world. There's other clues that will show up over time that you'll be able to catch this. And it's not something that's going to take down your house right away or overnight. So you've got time to adjust to it or react to it.
Great. All right. Anything else on this category?
Oh, just the other thing was, hazardous materials. When you're buying a property as is, sometimes you check to see what kind of things have been stored on the property. If there's excessive paint cans, or if they had a automobile repair business there. There are certain things that could have dumped into the soil to keep an eye out for, and all you're really looking for there is just the cleanliness of the properties or use of the property, and if you have those things there, just have a budget in mind for that. There's going to be some great deals out there among some of these properties that haven't been maintained. Just have a budget and be ready for it.
Alrighty, always have a budget. Money fixes everything. Just saying. Money will solve all problems. Alrighty, great. So our last piece of advice here is we want to go ahead and make sure we know the age of the equipment. Fred, give us some enlightening thoughts on this.
So we've been covering these different issues that are the biggest costs in the house, and where I can be a little dismissive to say, don't worry too much, there's a way to address this. Each of these things has the potential to be very expensive if they get out of hand, and that's why we want you to be diligent looking for them. And another great way to prepare yourself for those expenses, or know what's coming right away, is to find the dates of these appliances. Most modern appliances have a manufacture date on them, and with just a small flashlight, you can look at the little ID label on the front of a furnace, or a water heater, or an air conditioner, all those most expensive appliances, and you can see right there when it's done. Most of these things will last 10 to 15 years. Good gas furnaces can last 20. And so that can give you a little quick math there. That'll give you a sense of when to replace these things. A new set for a furnace can be $7,000 to $10,000. There are larger units that cost more. A great water heater can be $600, $700, even $1,000. So apply that to your long-term budget there, so you know what to expect. but you should be able to catch that on most of them. Now, where some of them don't have the manufacturer date, they'll have some sort of extended identification number. And if you look at that number close enough, the date is usually buried in there. It'll usually have the year in there.
Is there a way to Google a serial number or a model number? And
absolutely, there's a number.
Right,
of
I heard something about that.
Out there.
Say that again.
Yep, you can just. There's a number of apps and websites where you can just type in that whole serial number. It'll tell you exactly the brand, the model, and the year.
Perfect. So that's a great tip for home buyers. Go ahead and Google the serial number on the HVAC or on the hot water heater, and you'll get the information on it if you can't easily find it. So the example we have here, you can see in the upper right-hand corner, manufacturing date, March 2017. It's not always that easy to find. So if that weren't there, you would then take that serial number, pop it in Google, and get all the information that you need. I also want to just say that from personal experience, when we purchased our home, we've been in the house 10 years now, and our HVAC system was quite old at the time we bought the house, and it's still kicking. It's working just fine. So it doesn't mean if something's older, it's necessarily going to break soon. And sometimes the newer ones have problems quicker than the older units. So Fred, I guess what I've kind of learned through my career and my industry here is that something that's older doesn't necessarily mean it's not as good, right?
Well, there's some great exceptions out there, and that is like in Arlington and even some of the older homes in Springfield and down in Woodbridge, you find these great old, hot water boilers that heat a radiator system in the house. And if you can find a house with a boiler in it, buy it. The heat is just so substantial. It warms the whole structure. And I don't know how many of those I found that were over 40 years old and only needed minor maintenance to keep up with them. They're just great systems to have. We don't put them in homes much anymore because the installation of these systems now has become so expensive, because of all the pipes that are involved. Central air becomes a cheaper system to install, but a hot water boiler is not something to be afraid of. It's easy to learn and it lasts long. Some of the old gas furnaces or even oil-fired furnaces will last 30 years, 40 years. They're great systems that can be maintained. They just have components that you switch out, but the core of them continues to work well. The running joke out there amongst a lot of the older home inspectors was, we found plenty of air conditioners that would last past 25 and do just fine. For some reason, the new ones don't seem to last as long. But again, a great old unit like that isn't necessarily something to be scared of, especially when you see things like maintenance stickers that are on them, or someone has proudly displayed their maintenance log for the walkthrough. Right. There's a lot of comfort that comes from something that's old and durable, said the old guy.
Yeah, right. Well, you're on the phone, so nobody knows what you look like or your age. You're like undercover. And one other tip, if you're a home buyer and you see a home that really fits your needs, but it does have some older equipment in it or older appliances, you can look into a home warranty. A home warranty is a great plan to consider. You're going to pay a one-time fee for each time you need to have someone come out and look at an appliance or your plumbing or your electrical problems. It's usually a $75 fee, and they'll fix or repair whatever's wrong. And then you just pay a monthly rate, usually about $50 to $60 a month to have those. So those can also cover HVACs, hot water heaters, all kinds of things. We can have another show on that. So great, Fred. I think we're probably getting ready to wrap up here. Any other final thoughts you'd like to share with potential home buyers?
If you can get a home inspection, get one. If you can't get a home inspection, it's great to have a contractor or a retired home inspector like me, someone you can call on to do some sort of quicker safety inspection or answer questions for you on the phone. And I hope that what we presented today is helpful to you. And if you need more information there's so much information available out there. Don't let it overwhelm you. It's worth digging into when you buy a house. And if you call Elizabeth, she can always get me on the phone.
Absolutely. Fred, thank you so very much for your time today. I find your knowledge invaluable. I love listening to you talk. You're so full of knowledge. I describe Fred as he's the Jeopardy champion of anything homes. He would crush anybody. So if anyone's looking in the Northern Virginia area, again, please feel free to reach out to me. Fred will definitely be part of our team in helping you assess that home up front, helping you to have a more competitive offer and increasing your chances at being successful and getting the home that you desire. So that is it for today's show. Again, Fred, thanks so much for coming out, being with us today. Until next time.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yep. Signing off for today. Thank you all.